This video details the wiring between an AlphaPix 16 or an AlphaPix 4 and the RS-45 outputs and a dumb DMX controller, in this case our 30-channel dumb DMX controller. See our other videos for configuration of the actual controller settings. So what we have is we have our AlphaPix 16. It does have 3 RS-45 outputs. Now, also for reference here's an AlphaPix 4, and this has a single RS-45 output. The same thing applies for this, except for it's one single output. Now, we have the 3 outputs. These are labeled on the board, 1, 2, and 3. If you look between the boards, you will see the numbers. Those correspond with output 1, 2, and 3 in the configuration of an AlphaPix 16. Now, also listed on the board are the actual address information in here, DMX plus, which is positive, DMX negative, or ground. Now in this particular case, we're only going to be hooking up 2 wires, and we will not be hooking up the ground, which is not necessarily required in most installations. Now, we are going to go from this output on the AlphaPix 16 over to this input on this 30-channel DMX controller. A few other pieces of information. You can daisy chain these, so you could go out of one output to this dumb controller, out of this jack onto another controller, a dumb controller. Now, these jacks are not Ethernet, they're RS-45 based. So these are designed to take the output from the AlphaPix 16. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this cable. We have a Cat5 cable, and in this particular case we have a Cat5 input, but on this we have bare wire hookup. Now, what we're going to do is we're simply going to take our wire, whatever is the appropriate length, and we are going to connect it to the jack. That will allow us to go into the signal. But before we do that, we're going to cut off the other end so that we can wire it into the AlphaPix 16. So I'm just going to take some nippers, cut this off, and we're just going to strip back a little bit of the sheathing here. And we're going to extract the 1, 2 wires. That's pins 1 and 2. Now, if you need reference, we do mark that information right here, the pin 1 and 2, and what they reference on the board itself. Now, typically with 568B, your pin 1 is going to be this orange plus white, and solid orange is going to be pin 2. Now, for DMX reference, pin 1, or the white-orange, is going to be positive DMX, or positive, and then this is going to be solid orange is negative. Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to remove pin, or plug 1, output 1, right here from the controller. I'm going to take my screwdriver, and I'm just going to loosen it up. Now, it's important to note the pattern of the plugs. So when you plug them in, they're keyed, so they can only go in one way. So there'll be a top side and a bottom side. The flat side is the bottom. And so we're going to have DMX plus, then negative, then ground. So we're going to have plus here, and I'm just going to take this, loosen this up so I can get the screw in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in the white plus orange onto the first plug here, tighten it down, making sure that we get it onto wire, not onto any insulation, and screw it down. And we're just going to give it a tug to make sure it's properly hooked up. And we're going to plug it back into the controller. Again, number 1 here, pin, white, orange, orange. And now we also over here on this 30-channel controller, we do have a built-in test mode. It is recommended that you start off making sure your lights are working. Now on this controller, we even actually have LEDs on the board. Use the test mode on your dumb controller first before you hook it up. Because if your lights aren't working here, you'll be frustrated if that's where your problem is and it's not somewhere upstream. So we do have it in a test mode right now. I'm going to turn off that test mode by turning off dip switch number 1. And right now, we have a light on this particular controller that says it's powered up, red, and there is another LED next to it, and this will power up whenever we get a signal. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and we can see that the light's turned off, and we can see that there's a green flashing light now. That's because the AlphaPix is putting out a keep alive DMX signal. So even though we haven't configured anything yet, it's still putting out a DMX signal over to this controller, and it's told it all lights off, and that's why all these lights went off. So the key here is to look to see that you have the green light flashing. If you don't have the green light flashing, in our particular case, the controller is not operational. Now, we're going to proceed on to the next video next to see how we complete the rest of the setup in the software.